Welcome to Aviation News Talk. I'm Max Truscott. Coming up on the show, it's a Newsmakers episode where we talk with people in aviation who are making the news. Now, last month we talked about Cirrus Aircraft receiving the production certificate from the FAA to build their new Cirrus SF50 Vision jet. So a week ago, I flew to Knoxville, Tennessee to tour the new Cirrus Customer Experience Vision Center and to spend some time in the new Cirrus Vision jet. In a moment, we'll be talking with Travis Klum, the Executive Director of Service and Support at Cirrus, and I'll be asking him to tell us why Cirrus built this new facility, what they're doing now, and what future plans they have for Knoxville. Later, we'll tour their buildings and then climb into the very first customer-owned Cirrus Vision jet and talk about it with Vision Jet sales engineer Ryan Stewart. But first, let me quickly tell you 3 ways you can support this show. The most important way is if you enjoy it, please tell your aviation friends about the show. The next way you can support it is to leave a review on iTunes. And finally, if you want to learn more about the Garmin G1000 or how to fly WASP-based GPS approaches with any GPS, sign up for one or more of my online courses at pilotlearning.com. Courses range from $59 to $79. Or you can take all of them for just $29.95 a month, or sign up for all the courses for a year for $2.99, which is the same as getting 2 months free. Thank you so much for your support. By the way, if you just can't wait to hear about the Vision Jet, you can skip ahead to minute 14 in the show. But if you do, come on back to the beginning of the show to learn about the new campus Cirrus is building in Knoxville, Tennessee. And stand by, because this special Newsmaker episode starts now. So Travis, thank you so much for hosting me here in Knoxville today.
Thank you, Max. It's good to be here.
So until now, most of the Cirrus operation for the past 20 years has been up in Minnesota and North Dakota. Tell us why Cirrus decided to build this facility here in Knoxville.
It's really a matter of expansion. Bringing on a new product in the SF50 Vision Jet, we were out of space at our current facilities, both in North Dakota and in Minnesota, so the topic of building new buildings came up, and now we have the opportunity to really decide where do we want to do that. We could continue in Minnesota, in Duluth. We love it there. I lived there for 10 years and enjoyed my time there. And customers generally like it there in the summer. And it can be a brutal place in the winter, both for flight training and really just operation of aircraft and being able to effectively and efficiently deliver aircraft. So that was certainly a factor. The other piece of that, though, is Cirrus Aircraft is very interested in being more involved in our customers' ownership experience of the airplane. And Duluth, Minnesota is not on the way to many places. It is not centrally located to the population center of the United States. And Knoxville had all of those things. So that is one reason that we decided to uproot ourselves from Minnesota and move to the south. And Knoxville was a great opportunity, both in terms of the city, the quality of life for our employees that had to move here, or that elected to move here, I should say, as well as the airport environment and its relationship to the city as well. So Knoxville's been a great location for us.
I read Cirrus evaluated more than 20 different airports in the process of deciding to choose Knoxville. What were some of the factors you evaluated for which Knoxville came out on top?
There were certainly a number of factors that led us to Knoxville that are kind of unique in terms of what Cirrus was looking for in a community. One, the community had to be right-sized for a number of things. One, for our employees that would be moving from Duluth, Minnesota, Cirrus was very interested in having a community that was the correct size and the right atmosphere, the right price point for those employees and the families of those employees that would be moving here. But secondly, airport was very important in this decision, and for a number of reasons. We are going to be flight training out of this new facility. So it has to be an airport that's friendly to flight training. So moving to Atlanta and operating out of Hartsfield, for example, probably not a viable option. Other companies don't necessarily have to think about things like that. However, we wanted it to be a large enough airport that our international customers would have no problems getting into. So those are some of the factors. Other things like proximity of that airport to the major metropolitan area. And of course, the airport has to have a site able to build upon. So all of these factors combined, and we looked at a number of airports, and Knoxville rose to the top of the list.
That's great. Well, I've certainly enjoyed just checking the area out. I've never seen an airport where you could walk from the terminal to the hotel to the general aviation side of the field. I mean, this is really spectacular. So tell me, when did the facility open? How many folks work here now? And what do you project it's going to be in the future?
So the very first employees started relocating to Knoxville in May of 2016. And we have about 50 employees living and working here in Knoxville at our facility here. And about 30 of those employees and their families moved down from Duluth, Minnesota.
And what are some of the different buildings and facilities you have here currently? And what functions are you performing at this site?
Sure. So Cirrus Aircraft is really building a campus here in Knoxville at our Vision Center, and it's a number of buildings. We currently have 3 buildings that we're operating out of. The building we're sitting in today is our Experience Center, and it's actually in a office building immediately adjacent to our other buildings, and it's been a very good temporary location for us. Our other buildings are our Factory Service Center and our Delivery Center. And we're currently breaking ground on our brand new state-of-the-art training facility, which will hold all of our flight simulation and classrooms for training in both the SR aircraft and the SF50.
So when somebody buys an SR-22 today, how long will they end up spending in Knoxville for their training and the whole delivery process?
So similar to the training process in Duluth, Minnesota, we've very much replicated that here in Knoxville. And our standard process is a customer will show up for their aircraft delivery, and that will take approximately a day by the time we do some nice things for our customers on their delivery day, because it's really like receiving a new child into their family. And one thing we do is immediately following that, for the next 3 days, we have a scheduled transition training program for those customers. And so they'll typically spend about 4 days on site in Knoxville. About 3 of those are devoted to transition training.
Okay, so what are some of the nice things you do when people come here?
We are all about experience here at the Cirrus Aircraft Vision Center. And actually, our general manager of the Vision Center, his entire career has been spent managing Ritz-Carlton hotels. So we have really focused on our customers' experience as a hallmark of the aircraft ownership and certainly the delivery and training process. So every interaction and step that we put our customers through and that they experience is very on purpose and very scripted. So a typical day on delivery day will it actually begins the night before when the customer arrives. In the customer's hotel room, there will be a care package waiting for that customer that's been personalized to him or her, and welcoming them to Knoxville and to Cirrus Aircraft, and to thank them for being a customer and to get them excited about the next week of their lives here with Cirrus Aircraft. We start the morning, we invite them to our Experience Center, where a number of our ownership representatives and executives are waiting there to have some coffee and a light breakfast. And then when it's time to do the aircraft delivery, we have it staged perfectly in our delivery center, centered on the red carpet, with the doors open in perfect position with spotlights on it. And we actually drive in an SUV, and we drive right into the building. We open up the door right when the vehicle gets there, and the first thing they see when they're driving into the hangar is their brand new airplane, perfectly lit up, with a number of people there to greet the customer, and it goes from there. So the point is, we really try to script everything to make it a wonderful experience.
Excellent. So let's talk about the Vision Jet. How will the experience differ for someone coming to pick up a jet, and how long is that going to take?
Yeah, so certainly training in a turbine aircraft is a different sort of proposition for our customers, in that it requires a type rating. And while that may sound daunting, and it is an achievement that a number of people have gone through already, It's certainly going to be the easiest type rating that someone will get, in that it's a single engine aircraft. It flies exactly like a Cirrus, so our existing customers will certainly appreciate that. The avionics are similar, the handling is similar, the cockpit layout is similar. So from that aspect, it will be much more simple than a typical type rating that one would face, but it's still a type rating, and it will take, we budget approximately 2 weeks for that time span. And the other difference from the SR training is we do that type rating prior to the aircraft delivery. So a customer will actually arrive currently in Duluth, Minnesota, but very shortly in Knoxville, ahead of their aircraft delivery, to do their type rating and training, so that when they show up to receive their own aircraft, they will be able to fly away with their mentor pilot that same day if they want to.
So you were talking about the different buildings you have on the site here, and you mentioned that you're providing service. Tell us about what kind of service you're providing.
Yeah, so our factory service center is a true aircraft service center, and we welcome retail customers from anywhere in the world, quite honestly. We're certified 145 repair station under FAA and EASA, so we can work on any of those aircraft. And we have been operating in a soft opening mode for about a year, and then we've officially opened as of January of this year. The demand has been incredible. It's so far exceeded our expectations. The amount of customers that want to come to a Cirrus aircraft factory service center to get their aircraft serviced has been overwhelming. And we have already expanded to 2 shifts, and we'll be thinking about a 24/7 operation very shortly to accommodate all the customers that do want to come here to Knoxville.
Great. Thanks for that overview. Let's go over and take a tour of the buildings.
That sounds great. Let's go.
Okay, so we've jumped out of the car. We're in another building. Travis, tell me, where are we now?
Well, Max, we're standing in Cirrus Aircraft's delivery center here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And it is completely empty now, but you can see the literal red carpet rolled out and exactly where a customer's brand new airplane would be. And we talked about the process of driving through the garage door and seeing the airplane for the first time. And our customers really do enjoy that experience.
Great. I'm going to walk down this red carpet because I won't get that opportunity again. Tell me, how many SR-20s and 22s are you delivering each year through this building?
So we started delivering aircraft down here in the first of the year, and we've delivered, we just crossed a milestone. Last week, actually, we've delivered our 100th airplane from Knoxville, Tennessee. And in total, Cirrus intends to deliver north of 300 airplanes this year.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Will you join me? Shall we walk down the red carpet together?
Arm in arm.
Okay, Travis, we are moved off to yet another building. Tell me where we are here.
Well, we're standing in our factory service center, and you can see, or hear, I should say, things happening here. And we have a number of airplanes in here, both for annual inspections or preparation for delivery to the customers, some leaseback, demo leaseback terminations, and things like that. And we also actually have our very first customer SF50 here getting its first scheduled inspection completed.
That's awesome. Well, we'll talk about the Vision Jet in just a moment. Tell me about this area right here behind us.
Well, we're looking at our paint facility that's inside our factory service center, and it is certainly large enough to fit an SF50 inside, and we use that for any cosmetic touch-ups that occur as a result of aircraft delivery or our demo leaseback termination process, as well as retail paint work that our customers may want.
So at that point in the tour, we walked over to the SF50 Vision Jet and started talking with Ryan Stewart about that aircraft.
Yes, as Travis said, this is our first customer delivery. It's going through one of its stage checks, and it's been a great airplane to fly. It's been to a lot of our shows. You've probably seen it in some of our publications, and the owner's been a great ambassador for Cirrus Aircraft.
And then I asked Ryan to tell us about some of the specs on the SF50.
Sure. So current specs on the aircraft, you're going to see over 300 knots true airspeed at 28,000 feet. It's got an 8,000 foot cabin, 6.1 psi. This Plane will also have a slow stall speed of about 67 knots. So approach speeds are very similar to the SR. It's got the G3000 avionics-based suite in it, which we have dubbed as the Perspective Touch. And it's a 7-seat airplane, 5 adults, and 2 children.
And what kind of fuel burns would people see if they were flying along in this aircraft?
A good question. Yeah, at 28,000 feet and max continuous thrust, you're going to see about mid-60s range, mid to upper 60s range, and that's gallons per hour.
So that's pretty economical for a jet. So probably one of the most unique things about this jet is the V-tail, and you don't see many jets with a V-tail. So tell me why that was necessary.
Yeah, so the V-tail definitely gets a lot of attraction, and it's a unique silhouette for sure. This is kind of goes back to the early days of design. Is if you're going to create a more spacious cabin, a cabin that can occupy as many people as we do, where do you put the engine? And so the logical place for us was, okay, we've got to do a piggyback style arrangement where we can put it towards the rear of the aircraft on top of the roof. And so the second question is, well, where do you put the tail if you've got the exhaust coming out of this jet engine on the back of your aircraft? And so you look at some other designs, you look at some of the drones out there, they have an H-tail, a lot of them have that V-tail design, and that ultimately ended up being the best design for us.
And what kind of touchdown speed would we be looking at? What's going to be the approach speed on final?
So we've got an AOA system built into the aircraft, and that's been a huge benefit for us because as you're coming in, you're going to see that green donut on the airspeed tape, and you're going to be able to put your airspeed marker right at that green donut. And most of the time, you're going to see somewhere in the high 80s.
Got it. And that donut, I'm guessing, is going to vary based upon the weight of the aircraft at that time?
Absolutely.
What about weight and balance when you first step into the aircraft? Tell me how people would use this system to make sure they're within the CG range for the aircraft.
That's a very good question. That's a really nice feature about the aircraft is being able to use the system synoptics that are built into the avionics to check your weight and balance before you leave. This aircraft has a max weight of 6,000 pounds. 2,000 pounds of that is fuel. And so as you're getting into the different seats and the different stations, you can actually plug those weights directly into the avionics through the touch screens. And you can see that on a graphical chart as well as a summary list as well. And it will give you a caution or a CAS message should you be overweight in any area.
Tell me about mentor pilots. I imagine that some people, when they leave the factory, are going to need someone to fly with them a bit longer. When would you assign a mentor pilot, and how does that program work?
That is going to be through our training program. A lot of folks you'll see after they get their type rating, this could be dependent on insurance companies, but they'll have the need to do X amount of hours. Let's say it's 25 or something similar to that, where they need to fly with a mentorship pilot. And so we've taken the opportunity to do a cross-country sort of victory lap, if you will. Go visit all the different airports that you've always wanted to go to. Go visit the airspaces that you may or may not be familiar with. Teterboro is always a big one that comes up. Let's go figure out how fun those controllers can be, and get your hours and get signed off to fly solo.
So let's just imagine I brought my checkbook here with me here today. What would you charge me if I wanted to walk out the door with a new Vision Jet?
The current retail price on the Vision Jet is $1.96 million.
Wow, so I would get change back from my $2 million.
That's right.
So we've just stepped over right next to the Vision Jet. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, so we're standing at the nose of the aircraft, and you can see the nose radome. Just behind that, you have a cavity inside the nose here, which is typically reserved for baggage in a turbine aircraft. But what we've done is packed a parachute in on the jet, and this is a significantly larger parachute than the SR. It's about 88 feet in diameter, and it's rated for a 6,000-pound aircraft, so you can imagine the size.
What kind of speed do I need to slow to before I pull the parachute on a Vision Jet?
So the nice part about the avionics system, we were just talking about how so many things are integrated. The cap system is actually integrated into the avionics system as well. So if you were to pull the cap's T-handle while cruising at your max continuous thrust, the aircraft is actually going to slow itself down through the use of the autopilot. And the throttle would roll back to idle, and the parachute will continue to test logic until it figures out that it's at a slow enough speed to deploy.
That is amazing. Okay, great system. Tell me a little bit more about the jet.
Well, what else can we tell you? Maybe we should jump inside.
And that's just what we did. I stepped onto the step, which is built into the bottom of the cabin door. I moved the pilot's seat back, and then it was really easy to climb into the seat, and then I slid it forward. Now, getting in this front seat was even easier than getting into an SR-20 or an SR-22. Our recording again begins with Ryan climbing back into the co-pilot seat and Travis sitting behind me in one of the second row seats. Then Ryan coached me on how to slide my seat back so that I could pull on the cable to raise the stairs and close the door. Okay, come on in next to me here.
Okay. So Max, I don't know if you noticed, but I had a handle at the back of the seat where I was able to pull the co-pilot seat all the way to the rear, same as the pilot seat. And Travis is able to load behind us as well without having to step over any luggage, without having to step over us. We can actually shut the door with the same procedure. So if you slide your seat all the way to the rear,
okay,
and there's another handle on the left side at the bottom of the seat. And that detent, as you slide over, allows you to go all the way to the back of the rails.
Wow, I just slid back about 2 or 3 feet. Okay.
So now that'll allow you to shut the door in a seated position from the left seat.
Got it. Okay.
So your passengers are all loaded. You as the pilot are able to shut the door. You slide up to your station. You're ready to fire up the avionics, go through your checklist, twist the knob to the run position, and press the start button, and the engine will spool up.
Wow, that looks like a very simple starting procedure. I got to tell you, my first net impression as I jump in here, so much room in the front 2 seats. I got to tell you, for me as a guy that's just a little over 6 feet tall, climbing into the front seat of a Cessna Citation, it takes about 60 seconds to just kind of bend and twist and, get in. This was easy. I mean, we've got plenty of shoulder room, plenty of leg room. This is an incredibly comfortable cockpit.
Absolutely. This is something that we've taken a lot of thought in the design of the aircraft, and at its widest point, the Vision Jet is over 5 feet wide. Wow. And it's over 4 feet tall. Wow. So you can see there's plenty of room for each passenger. Travis has got ample amount of room for his head, and he could, if he was my height, could stick his legs straight out without touching the seat.
Yep, a lot of leg room. I can see that. He's pretty comfortable in the back row there. And I'm looking overhead here, and I'm seeing a familiar-looking red handle.
That's correct. That's the CAPS T handle we were referring to before. And you see the CAPS pin, and the T handle is the exact same setup you would recognize from the SR world.
Okay, good. So I won't pull that handle today.
That's right.
Now next to it, I see something I'm not used to seeing in Cirrus aircraft.
That's right. Those are the Ero's Quick Dawn oxygen masks. So those are in place in the event of a depressurization or some other high altitude event where you would need oxygen.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking in the front, I've got 2 large screens and it looks like 3 smaller screens. Tell me what we've got going on here.
That's right. So the PFD and MFD are both 14-inch flight displays. You'll notice you have 3 touch screens in front of you. We like to refer to these as Aviate, Navigate, and then Communicate. This first screen is usually used for the PFD functions, changing menus, setting up V-speed reference bugs. Everything in the middle is normally associated with the MFD, being able to look through the synoptics, setting up your moving map page, looking at those weight and balance pages we were talking about earlier. And then the third touchscreen controller is dedicated to comms and transponder functions as well. You've got a playback button on the top menu, which is extremely handy to have in case you missed that ATC call. And then having that third screen dedicated strictly to communications means you're not going to interrupt what you're doing on the first 2 screens, especially if you're entering in some waypoints on a flight plan or something else that you would hate to back out of just to change the frequency.
The other thing that impresses me is I'm sitting here, far fewer buttons that I'm used to flying in any glass cockpit aircraft, including the Cirrus Perspective. So it looks like we have no buttons at all around the MFD and the PFD. So those are really, really clean, large displays. And it looks like all of the few buttons we do have are on these 3 smaller touchscreen displays below. Now, I'm guessing if this were turned on, that there would be additional buttons that we could push on each of these smaller screens.
That's correct. So you've got, just like any Garmin product, you've got chapters and pages where you can go and find the appropriate button that you're looking for. But you mentioned that there are a lack of buttons around the flight displays and around the touchscreens, and that was done on purpose, actually. This was built based on the theory that if the button goes in the cockpit, it has to earn its way into the cockpit.
I like that. Well, and I think buttons are also one of the weak part of the design because, 5-10 years down the road, they sometimes start to corrode ever so slightly, and then you've got to replace the switch because, you have to push it really hard to make it work. So that makes a lot of sense to me. So right below those 3 displays, looks like we've got the autopilot. So tell me about that.
That's right. This autopilot head was the same autopilot head you saw in the G6 recently. This is sort of that overlap I was referring to earlier where if I'm an SR guy stepping up into the turbine world, I'm already going to be familiar with the function of how that autopilot works. You notice we've got the same breakup sections of a roll mode and a pitch mode with autopilot hold in the middle.
Got it. Just one other impression as I was just starting to look at the overall cockpit. I almost feel like I'm in a car more than I am in a traditional jet. This feels to me like I'm in a high-end luxury car. And what made me think of that was, first, we don't have buttons that extend from the far left to the far right. Instead, we've got the air inlets, for example, and we probably move in 5 or 6 inches until we get to the screen, largely open area. And then as I look down to where the throttle is, it looks like the stick shift in a car, or kind of the throttle here kind of resembles that. Was there some thinking in the design to make this look more like a car?
Everything is essentially done for simplicity. We want to make flying as safe as possible, but also as simple as possible, because most of the time we have pilots that are doing this for fun. They're not professionals. They fly when they have the chance to do it, and they like to keep everything very similar to their lifestyle. So if you come from the high-end car world, or the high-end automobile world, I should say, you'll notice a lot of things are very similar in the fit and finish of the aircraft.
Yeah, the simplicity is just really striking. This has got to be by far the simplest cockpit I've ever seen in kind of a modern aircraft, and certainly far simpler than any jet aircraft. So as I'm looking down here below the autopilot, we've got the flap switch, we've got the throttle, a trim wheel, and a fuel control, and that's it. So we've got, 4 items beneath the console. If I go to the left, I've got circuit breakers against the side of the wall. I've got my side stick, which looks fairly similar to what we would have in the Cirrus. And then we've got only 2 things related to starting the engine. This is unbelievable. Tell me, how do we start this aircraft?
That's right. So as you're going through the checklists, you'll find that the procedure is simply twist the knob to run. You'll hear the fuel pump turn on automatically, and you'll press the engine start-stop button. And as you do that, the FADEC, Williams FADEC control box will actually monitor the engine parameters as the engine starts to spool up. And those parameters could be the ITT, the fuel coming from the engine, all the things that you would need to be careful and watch out for on most turboprops with hot starts and hung starts are all being monitored and watched as well with that FADEC. Unbelievable.
All right, so then we, after we twist that to run, we push the button above that says start stop.
That's it for the startup procedure, and then the shutdown procedure would be the exact opposite. You would spin the knob to off, and then you would press and hold the stop button for about 2 seconds.
I'm not sure I'm qualified to do that. That sounds way too simple. Now we've got a couple of other things just above us, just in front of the caps handle. It looks like I see engine, fire, acknowledge, and so on. What kind of things do we have here? We've got probably about a half a dozen buttons and indicators.
Yeah, so this overhead panel is dedicated for emergency use. So you'll notice that you touched on a few of these items. We've got the engine fire acknowledge switch, which would cut off fuel to the engine, and then you have the push to discharge left and right buttons for the halon bottles. They're equipped with two. That's why we have left and right. And then you have the emergency battery switch up there in an event that I needed to use that system, as well as the mask mic buttons left and right for both quick dawn oxygen masks. The last two buttons over here on the right, you've got a cabin pressure dump switch, which will obviously dump the cabin should we need to pull the air out of the cabin. And then we've got the ELT arm on and reset.
Now let's just talk about the electrical system a little bit. Is this set up similar to some jets where you have both a generator that is used for starting the engine and then gets used to generate power for the system, or are we looking at something more like the SR20 series with alternators?
No, the first way you described is you do have a generator starter, which is going to produce most of your power, and then you have a backup alternator, which is labeled Gen 2.
Got it. So if everything is working well, the generator is generating power for us. If things are not, then we go to the alternator.
That's correct.
Got it. We've got switches just down below the top screen. This looks like the same switches from the Cirrus SR20 practically. We've got battery 1, battery 2. We've got generator 1, generator 2 instead of the alternators, the lights. I mean, this really is incredible. If I were jumping from a Cirrus SR20 or 22, I'd be looking at almost exactly the same switches in this aircraft.
That's right. There's a very nice demonstration where we can have you close your eyes, reach up, and you would most likely be able to turn on BAT 2 or reach over and twist the flat panel. Everything is in that very similar spot you were referencing with the 20 or the 22, the SR series.
Mm-hmm. You know, I noticed there's one thing that we don't have in the SR20 and the 22, which I haven't mentioned. What's this little funny-looking thing here in the middle?
So that is the gear knob. So up and down for the retractable gear, and we've put that in that position so that it's a very purposeful up or down position.
Well, the nice thing I like about the location of this gear handle, it's a long ways away from where my hand usually is. It's up there between the two main displays. I'm going to have to really think long and hard about reaching for that switch. It's so far away from the throttle and the flaps. The odds of accidentally going to that switch to me look like it's pretty slim.
That's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, so that's the one switch we don't want to try today while we're sitting here in the hangar, I guess.
That's right.
Good. So looking into the back here, I see next to Travis, we've got, looks like another window with a different kind of handle. What's that?
That's right. That's your emergency egress window or access panel, if you will. So if the door should be not an option for you, you do have a way to exit through the passenger window.
Got it. And where do we put baggage in this aircraft? You mentioned at the very beginning we can't put that in the nose, so where do we do that?
So we've got a separate baggage compartment, and it's behind the rear bulkhead. It's unpressurized, but it holds 300 pounds baggage capacity. There's also another option behind that, and it's our cargo extend. That holds 40 pounds of baggage, and that's usually used for your longer items, such as skis or fishing poles, golf clubs, whatever you'd like to put back there.
I'm getting very excited, so I think we should be going for a demo flight. How do we get these other planes out of the way so we can get to the hangar door?
That's right. We've got to get these pulled first, don't we?
So tell me why this aircraft is sitting here right now in this hangar.
So right now we're sitting inside the factory service center, and this aircraft is going through one of its stage checks. This is called stage 2, and it's a check for the engine.
All right, I'm going to slide my chair back here and talk to Travis. Travis, tell me a little bit more about this aircraft from your perspective in the second row seats there.
Yeah, I'm sitting in the second row of the aircraft, so the first row of passenger seats, and this has the option to be 3 passengers abreast. We have it configured in a 2 abreast situation right now, and it's very roomy back here, and I have all the luxuries and comforts of a luxury automobile. Obviously cup holders and things like that. But next to every station I have a USB charging port that can charge any sort of device. And I also have, if I'm so inclined, is an 1/8 inch jack for my earbuds that may or may not be noise canceling, or my light headset that I might wear on an airliner, so that I can watch in-flight entertainment or even communicate with the crew over this headset at the same time. And this airplane is really meant to be an interactive experience with the crew and the passengers, because the goal of this airplane is to have the crew and the passengers be of the same family.
Got it. To that point, where's the wall separating us?
There is none. It is all one continuous experience, again, much like a luxury automobile.
Got it. But of course, there's probably no screen for the kids to watch TV or anything.
Well, we're not looking at one in this aircraft, but it is an option. We have an option for a 22-inch fold-down screen for our in-flight entertainment package. And in this day and age, there's really no need for an elaborate system that's driving this, because, Max, we all carry around the movies that we want to watch right in our pocket. Even on Netflix, we can download any sort of show and put it on our iPhone. So we've simply provided a method to connect that to the airplane. So we have an HDMI input that I can plug either an iPhone or an iPad to watch a movie. That also gets broadcast over the intercom system to those passengers that may or may not want to hear it. It's in a business environment, perhaps a charter environment. We can display a presentation potentially that we're all working on, and someone can be working on that on their laptop, displayed on that screen while we're traveling to that business presentation.
Travis, tell me a bit more about the parachute system.
Yeah, the parachute system for the SF50, and Ryan was describing it earlier, is one of the most complex projects that Cirrus aircraft has ever undertaken. As I mentioned, this is a parachute for a 6,000-pound aircraft, and the challenges grow exponentially with a parachute as the weight and the speed of the aircraft increase. And Ryan was talking about we got very creative with the avionics and some capabilities that we have there to be able to control the speed and the envelope of the deployment parameters, but also just the sheer force of the airstream when this parachute ejects was a big challenge for Cirrus aircraft. And luckily, we had just been through a major parachute project when we went through G5 on the SR series, and we increased the size of the parachute to accommodate the larger aircraft there. So we learned a lot from that exercise, and it really helped us here. We went through a number of iterations of how this parachute system would work, and we had concepts of a 3-cluster parachute, kind of think of like an Apollo spacecraft, but that was pretty complicated. And 1 large parachute was an option, and that's the option we did end up going with. The next challenge, though, is how to get this parachute that's quite large and a bit heavier than the SR parachute out of the aircraft. Mm-hmm. In the SR, we use a rocket assist, and that works very well. But a rocket, we would need a rocket about the size of a fire extinguisher to get this parachute out of here, which is a bit too big for our liking, a little bit too much rocket fuel carried on the aircraft. So what we actually did is a 2-stage system, and Cirrus Aircraft actually just won its first ever patent for this system, and it actually uses an automobile-style airbag to eject the entire pack out of the aircraft, and also has the rocket that assists that deployment, and it works very well.
And hopefully neither you nor I will ever have to pull that handle.
Absolutely, but I would not hesitate to, and it's been, of course, used many times in the SR, and we've tested it extensively in the SF as well.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't mean to imply by my question that I wouldn't use it. I'm a firm believer in the parachute. Just look at the safety record, the large number of people that have been saved, and the people that unfortunately chose to ride the airplane down without pulling the parachute. And you look at how many of those probably would have been saved. So yeah, I'm a huge believer in the parachute. I think that's one of the big contributions that Cirrus has made to the industry.
I couldn't agree more, and I know you are, Max, but I do have to always remind people that that system is there for their safety, and they should not hesitate to use it. And it's really become one of the hallmarks of Cirrus Aircraft and forms part of the core of our company.
And I've noticed a lot of light sport aircraft are now incorporating it as well. More and more have them. So other people are coming around and starting to see the utility of it.
Absolutely, and actually the light sport group and ultralights were really the pioneers in whole airframe parachute recovery, and Cirrus really helped to scale that up to the mass general aviation market, and now the light turbine market.
Well, that was great fun. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me on this visit to Knoxville, Tennessee. And a big thank you to Travis Klum and Ryan Stewart for hosting me at the Cirrus Vision Center. And a quick reminder, if you are trying to decide between buying a new Cirrus or a slightly used one, please contact me early in the process so I can help you with that evaluation. I specialize in the Cirrus and work with people around the country. If you enjoyed this show, please support it by telling your aviation friends, or by leaving a review in the Apple Podcast app, or signing up for one of my courses at pilotlearning.com. In the meantime, fly safely and keep the blue side up.